turned out to the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, John Bolton, who was National Security Advisor during President Trump's first term. You've probably thought about, written about, talked about a potential attack on Iran more than almost anybody else over the years. And I'm just wondering, as you watch this over the first couple of nights, how what's happening compares to your expectations.
Well, I'm nervous about the political aspects of this. I think the military has demonstrated their capabilities with incredible professionalism. I think they have demonstrated how well prepared they are, how well planned their operations are. And that is becoming, I'm worried, a sharper contrast with the lack of preparation on the political side. We can't get a completely straight answer from the president what his objective is. He says, with one set of remarks, it's regime change. And that, by the way, is my preferred objective. I'm entirely in favor of it. But then says in other remarks that this could be over with in a couple days. Successors to the Ayatollah Khamenei are prepared to talk. If this turns into a one-and-done operation, 2, 3, 4 days of strikes, and then President Trump says, okay, opposition, over to you, there's not going to be regime change. There's constant criticism that he's not prepared the American people for what's at stake and what we need to do. He's not briefed Congress. He's not briefed the allies. It bespeaks a lack of planning on the what we used to call the National Security Council side of things compared to the very complete planning done by the Pentagon, and that's dangerous.
When you look just at where the strikes have taken place, like if we pop up the telestrator, I'll just look at the key sites hit during Operation Epic Fury, and we have a couple of different looks at this. But, the Supreme Leader's office and compound, the Ayatollah being killed, as the president talked about, in that strike here in Tehran, and all these other strikes across the region, whether they be the oil refinery that was hit, natural gas refinery that was hit, or again up in this area where the Supreme Leader was killed. Doesn't that tell you, if you're going after the head of the regime, that you're acting as if you're trying to change the regime, whether you say it or not?
Well, that's what the Israelis are doing. I mean, they haven't said this publicly, but it seems to me there's a pretty clear division of labor, at least in these first 2 days. That the Israelis are going after regime leadership and we're going after military targets, and that's fine. I think Bibi Netanyahu knows exactly what he wants, and it's regime change, and he knows exactly how to go about it. The question is whether the U.S. will follow through on it. I'm just worried that if we are not coordinating effectively with the opposition, we haven't heard the president speak about that. Indeed, when he speaks, it's as if to say, well, we're going to do our thing, then opposition, it's over to you. That's not going to work. That's not the way it happens. That's not the way that you set the circumstances by which the degradation of the instruments of Iranian state power weaken the regime and allow the opposition, hopefully together with defectors from the regime, generals in the regular conventional military, not the Revolutionary Guard, to take control. Nobody should believe that air power alone is going to bring regime change. It is a means to weaken the regime, weaken the morale of the regime's top officials, and boost the confidence of the opposition that they can effect regime change.
So to be clear, you're concerned that the president could stop short here and not go far enough, right? And if so, what would that tangibly end up looking like, or what's the fear there of what would actually happen if he doesn't go, in your view, far enough?
Well, I think if that happens, then we may inflict more substantial damage on the nuclear and ballistic missile program. But if the regime stays in place, they will start to put it back together again. And as we saw in January, when there were demonstrations all over Iran, the regime repressed them with great brutality. The president said in the State of the Union message, 32,000 killed. Once we pull back and the president says it's up to the opposition, the repression will begin again. That's why, you need a plan. You just don't say, I think regime change will be a goal, unless if you're not serious. If you're not serious about it, then you do it day by day, which I get worried we may be seeing here.
Should that plan include, the potential for who the new leader would be? And, our best plans haven't always worked out in the best way, as you know, over the years in the Middle East, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan, or years ago, I guess you could even say, in Iran itself, when the CIA led a coup in the 50s. The Shah stayed in power, but that didn't end well in 1979 either. What would be a good plan that could end well this time?
Well, honestly, let's take the return of the Shah.
Okay.
He lasted for 26 years. I mean, what do you have to have a good plan? 50 years? Is that the minimum? Personally, I'm less concerned about the regime that comes after the Ayatollahs, as long as it's not the Ayatollahs and the Revolutionary Guard again. America's interest here is Iran's nuclear weapons, ballistic missile programs, and its support for international terrorism. That's what we want to destroy. The regime itself will never give them up. That's why we need to destroy the regime. What the Iranians do next is up to the Iranians. It's for them to decide. People want to know what the mistake in Iraq was. It was that we tried to become part of the government. We overthrew Saddam Hussein. That was a huge success. And then we should have left it to the Iraqis. Picking a leader for Iran before the Ayatollahs are gone is taking your eye off the ball.
All right, Ambassador John Bolton, like I said at the start, has thought as much about this as almost anyone. Thank you, sir. It's always good to have you on.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.